So I went to my first tournament recently and had an absolute blast. Going into it, I was actually pretty nervous about not 100% knowing my rules or running out of time given we were allocated 2 hours and 45 minutes per game. So here are the things I did to make things as easy as possible on the day. Firstly, the practical, and probably some advice your dad would give you. Accommodation and getting there. Super obvious, but make sure you've got an easy way to get to the venue. The tournament I played at started at 8:30 in the morning and was a 2-hour drive away. So I decided to stay overnight nearby. So I was well rested for the 3 games on the first day and 2 games on the second. I also triple checked the location and how long it took to get there. Ridiculously simple point, but really important to call out. Why make things hard for yourself? Instead, be well rested and on time and ready to focus. Transporting your miniatures. Outside of ensuring your miniatures are adequately protected, make sure your system allows them to be easily taken in and out again. Order your infantry squads in groups of 10, backed with a squad sergeant donating every 10th miniature. I noticed a lot of other players also had these trades where they could move their army quickly between different games. So I ended up buying this thing for like £7 from the venue. Other players simply used T-trays or similar, that worked completely fine. Invest in a dice rolling tray. I bought this small wooden tray from Amazon, and instead of rolling 18 lasgun shots on the table and dice going all over the place, I threw them into the tray, making counting up my hits much quicker. Again, uber basic, but cutting out unnecessarily fussing that could be spent on you focusing on tactics. And on the topic of dice, I found it handy to have several different types of dice. If, for example, I was putting my Executioner plasma cannon and las cannon into a single target, I will roll, say, 7 red dice and 1 black dice. Also had a distinct dice that I used strictly for marking wounds, and these were simply smaller dice than my other dice. I wanted to avoid any confusion, particularly in the later games when I was getting tired. I bookmarked all my codexes and additional rules for any stratagems I was planning to use. I did this in case I'd forgotten any key points, or if my opponent queried any of them. However, luckily none of my opponents did so in the tournament I played. And on to rules. I'm pretty sure most tournaments will let you know which missions you'll be playing and in what order. The one I played at let us know via the player pack, and this allowed me to pre-choose my secondary objectives ahead of each game. I'll definitely do another video on selecting secondary objectives, but just as an example, for the first game I played, which had the mission priority target, went with the mission secondary objective priority targets, as it's a no-brainer. Engage all fronts, because the deployment zone allowed this to easily happen, and bring it down, as my opponent had plenty of vehicles. Pre-choosing the secondary objectives meant it was less to think about on the day itself. Now, depending on how big the tournament is, make sure you get a sense for what the other armies that are going to be played. If it's a smaller tournament with say less than 30 players, it's doubly advantageous, given there's a stronger chance you may actually play against another player. If you review this and see it's mostly top tier armies, then honestly prepare yourself for a tough time, as us Astra Militarum commanders have our flimsy 8th edition codex. But more seriously, think about how to counter certain armies, being as simple as what stratagems or rules you can use against them. The tournament I played at actually had quite a few Chaos players, meaning I could have consistently used Vengeance Vacadia over and over again, or ensuring that I remembered that Colonel Strachan can reroll the wound roll against monsters due to his been there, seen it, kill it rule. But classic Mercenaries lore is that I didn't play any Chaos players or those with monsters over the course of the 5 games I played. Another thing that can really help is a turn-by-turn cheat sheet. I wrote one up and printed it on a single A4 sheet, stipulating each phase, paying particular attention to when secondary objectives were to be achieved, either at the end of the movement phase, end of my turn, and those scored in the following command phase. I listed key stratagems to use, which was super helpful in particular for my custodians, as I'm not as close to their rules as I am to guard rules. I started off by strictly following my cheat sheet, and by the end I didn't need it, as I really started to get to the rhythm of things. Now, briefly on army list composition. A good tip my friend who also attended the tournament has got me onto is the idea of symmetry. This is as basic as taking 2 tank commanders, 2 manticores, 4 or 6 infantry squads, and 2 separate scout sentinels, for example. This means you could evenly deploy your army during deployment and mentally segment your force into, say, 3 infantry squads with each tank commander, manticore, and scout sentinel. It's a minimal point, but it does apply the idea of keeping things simple in your brain. On the point of simplicity, apply this also to your weapon choices. It would be easy to have infantry squads with a wide array of sergeants, special and heavy weapons, but all this would do is slow down your gameplay and make target priority more complicated. I ran my 6 infantry squads with just las guns, but if you were to equip them with other weaponry, give them all the same layout. For example, all 6 sergeants with power swords and bolt pistols, and all 6 squads with plasma guns. And a final point is on marking units that have received orders, vehicles that have fired their smoke grenades, or units that are receiving the benefits of psychic powers. You could again just mark them with dice, with say a 2 on a unique dice type, representing front rank fire, second rank fire, or a 1 representing reroll hit rolls of 1 for example. If you still have the old Astra Militarum data cards, you could simply use them to achieve the same thing. Last thing you want to do is forget that you've given an order to a unit that could push the dice the right way for you. Right, so there you have it. My tips to make your first or any tournament as easy as possible. A lot of you know I spent time in the military and there was a saying of the 7 Ps. They are, prior and proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Apply the same principle when you go into a tournament, allowing you to truly focus on the game and have fun. So yep, what are your tips? And if you have any, let me know in the comments. And as always, if you want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing, or leaving a YouTube super thanks, or sponsoring me on Patreon. If you do so, get your name called out in the Patreon Platoon roll call at the end of each video. Thanks for watching. Patreon Platoon, sound off. Lieutenant Mitchell, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeants Brady, Berdal, Gilliam, Merrill, Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Witten, Guardsman Combs, Heels, Nitton, Nguyen, Tom, Tonkin.